Hello everybody, my name is Will and welcome back to Flyout. Today we're going to be building a bomber for the first time. So I've built strike aircraft or fighters that could be construed as strike aircraft in the past. However, we've never built a dedicated multi-engined bomber. So today that is going to be, well, what we're going to be doing. I've already said that. But yeah, so it's going to be a kind of US themed bomber, kind of B-25-ish. Picture this as, what if America developed the B-25 long past its service life, to a point where the airframe probably wouldn't be practical anymore. Frankly, this design would most likely be outshone by smaller and more agile strike fighters. Kind of imagine the A4D or even the Westland Wyvern, which we're going to bring up again for a second time in a video, and once again, the Westland Wyvern's quite relevant because technically speaking, we're using turboprops again, so it is a jet engine powering a propeller. However, there's a twist this time. There's a slight difference between this and the last time we used a jet engine to power a propeller, which is that only 50% of the actual propulsion of this engine is from propeller spinning activities. The other 50% is genuinely jet thrust. So the engines that you will see me putting on in just a minute, at the moment just putting in a rear turret, they are going to be spinning two 5-bladed propellers up front, which are tuned for fairly high speed and fairly low RPMs, to be entirely honest. And then behind that, there's two jet exhausts. So we've kind of got the best of both worlds. I'm reluctant to say the best of both worlds because this is... it's not something that has been done, and there's typically fairly good reason for that when it's not been done before. People try a lot of things when it comes to military aviation, because ultimately it's very lucrative and people like money. So if it's not been done, then there's probably fair reason why it's not been done. And you know what, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it has been done and maybe it's completely effective, but I've never heard of it. So yeah, its main purpose here, in my headcanon, in my idea for the lore of this vehicle, is it would be for short takeoff and landing purposes. So this thing would be able to take off from much shorter runways than conventional jet aircraft of the era, because we were still in the era before afterburning. It would just be jet thrust. Picture your, like, acceleration levels on a Swift, for instance. They don't accelerate great. You know, it's got a very, very good top speed. But actually taking off from a carrier, you'd need huge amounts of assistance from steam catapults. But still, kicking around, you've got the problem that a lot of the carriers that are still in service are the ones from World War II, which might not necessarily have been fitted with steam catapults yet. So if you need something with bomb load capabilities to take off from those carriers, you need it to accelerate well, and that's where this comes in, because it trades a little bit of, I guess, mostly efficiency of jet aircraft for the acceleration of propeller-driven aircraft. So, yeah, it ends up being quite a draggy jet once you get up to high speeds, and it ends up being quite a heavy prop aircraft. But together, it's very, very nippy. It's this thing in level flight, eventually, and spoilers, by the way, for later on in this video, will eventually reach 900 kilometers an hour in a straight line, which is very, very impressive considering that this body is very much looking like the B-25. It's not the most aerodynamic thing you've ever seen, and the wings aren't particularly swept. Frankly, it would probably take a lot of reinforcement to get this thing to not shake itself apart at those kind of speeds. However, we don't have to worry about that because, yeah, it's a game. But, you ask, what would it do after it takes off from a carrier? Because you don't really want to do level bombing from a carrier. I mean, you can in the case of things like the Doolittle raid, but those are kind of few and far between, and you don't really carry enough capacity in 1, 2, or let's say an air wing of maybe 6 of these to really do a significant amount of damage. You kind of want to send that from land when you can amass 10, 20, maybe 30 aircraft together and really consolidate that bomb power in one specific place. This would probably end up being anti-submarine. All things considered, anti-submarine typically preferred heavier aircraft due to the long periods that you would be out at sea just hunting the hunters. You would spend an extremely long time flying around and hoping that you will just kind of run into a submarine. Not exactly run into it, but you'd only really know roughly where they are because, yeah, they're underwater. They're kind of hard to see. So, in reality, it would probably have a big radar bulge on the bottom of it, which would constantly be going bleep, bleep, bleep into the water and hoping to get a bleep back. However, yeah, I didn't bother rendering that because it doesn't look as cool. And that's the main purpose of this thing, really, in Flyout, is to look cool. So, yeah, I mean, we're getting to the point now where it does actually start looking somewhat good. You may notice the engines look a little bit goofy. I kind of had an idea in my mind of where I was going to go, but it turns out that idea was just bad. So in a moment, I spend a little while just completely redesigning the engines based, I think, on another American aircraft. Instead of being the B-25, it's called something like, what's it called? P4M. The P4M Mercator. It's, yeah, it's a bit of an odd aircraft, and it kind of looks similar. They only built 21 of them, with quite a number of them being like electronic warfare aircraft, which I guess is another use that this thing could have, because you need a lot of power on an electronic warfare aircraft, to be entirely honest, and this thing would certainly be able to carry quite a lot of power in it. So yeah, there's another use. Look at me, I'm selling it to you at this point. But yeah, here we go with the engine redesign, and what I wanted to do was kind of make it look a little bit bulkier. The engines kind of just looked weedy. There's a lot of technical stuff going on in these engine bays. You've got the whole jet engine, which is going to be quite the advanced piece of kit back in this time, and then you've got the gearbox and the assembly to get it all to the propeller at the front and drive that to, you know, generate the low-end speeds. So I decided that these engine pods were just not big enough. So we've got these long cones on the propellers now, which kind of look like the ones that you would see on an F7F, or once again, the P4M Mercator. Those kind of, I don't know, late war American long engine nacelles. They look pretty. I quite like them. And then obviously big ram scoops on the top of them, because who doesn't love ultra amounts of scoopage on their aircraft? Scoopage is important, and we are going to add even more scoopage on the underside of these things, because hey, you can never get enough air, and especially with the disruption that you're going to be getting from this propeller spinning around, jet engines need a lot of air. Otherwise, you know, what are they going to move you with? They use the air to push you forwards. And then, obviously, we have to fit the exits in, which I decided that instead of going all the way through the wings, we would actually put them under the wings, and therefore, well, there wouldn't be the concerns about structural integrity. You could kind of keep the spars all one solid piece rather than having to split the spars at the engine, and yeah, blah, 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 blah. I don't know, it just looked cooler, to be entirely honest. But, you know, things looking cool in games like this tend to come from familiarity. So, you know, you recognize something from a real-life vehicle and that looks cool to you because it's familiar. And so, I mean, this is kind of familiar. It kind of gives the vibe of I'm wanting to say the Arado with its underslung engines, but not really. I can't really think of anything, to be honest. I'm sure there's examples of it, and I'm sure I'm going to be told in the comments exactly what this looks like, which I I do appreciate, because sometimes it's something I've literally never heard of before. And of course, you know, good for the old engagement. Now, we did put on a camouflage to begin with. It was kind of a normal US Air Force camouflage in that metallic grey, but this plane, really, I didn't see much use of it in the main US Air Force. I mean, by this point in time, we were probably seeing the B-52, and God knows America does not want to give up the B-52 for anything. So the Navy definitely seemed like the better choice for where this thing would be spending its time, and we obviously, as we are a bomber, needed to put some bomb bays on, so that's what I'm doing now. And bomb bays, they're a little bit fiddly, so I will admit I have cut just a little bit of this out, but yeah, I mean, it's necessary to stop me from talking for about 40 minutes, because this is the first time I've done a build on one of these videos that has genuinely gone across 2 days. I normally just try and get it done in one, but I was pooped from building this thing. It absolutely killed me, so there was no way that was happening. And to be honest, the bomb bays kind of, with their slight seam between the doors and with the fuselage, they add a little bit of detail there, which you just don't get otherwise, and they kind of just make the whole thing feel a lot more complete. I don't know if you completely get what I mean, but maybe when I zoom out, you'll just see what I mean by like the ever so slight change in color, the change in texture slightly, and the, you know, the little lines between them. It looks like weld lines or like gaps between panels, not gaps per se, because obviously you don't really want panel gaps on a jet that's going 900 kilometers an hour. That's going to cause a lot of drag, but you know how planes look. It looks real. That's the term I'm looking for here. And then we just got to make sure that these things don't touch the ground, basically by removing the other half of the nodes and just kind of clipping them into themselves. There we are, just setting up the axes for it. This, I mean, I had it on 8 and 7 to open and close the bomb bays. It would be nice to see if we can actually bind them to a button eventually, but yeah, I mean, here they are, not working at all. Yeah. Bomb bays are really satisfying in this game, actually. And a lot of moving parts in this game are satisfying. Maybe we will build a plane that has like nice naval folding wings or something, and maybe we can have a telescopic tail or telescopic wings, some ridiculous thing. Maybe I think the Russians had a couple of experiments where they used telescopic wings on their fighters, so that's probably something we could pull off in this game, so maybe for a future video. There's our unfortunate fellow. He's going to sit in the back. Unfortunately, I can't remove his seat to the best of my knowledge, so he's kind of sat really far back there, and there's a nice close-up of his eyes. Gosh, yeah, this was quite late at night when I got to building this section, but here it is. This morning? Yeah, last night? About an hour ago. As of recording this, with pretty much the aesthetics of this thing done, but the plan was always to make this a naval aircraft, so it was only fitting that I spent a little moment putting on a naval-themed camouflage. So I was kind of thinking of the PBJs. If you've ever seen those things, they have this dark blue on top, and then a lighter blue in the middle, and then a kind of really, really light blue or a white on the underside. And I just think that's just a generally nice camouflage on these things. So yeah, I was stealing that. That was their camouflage before, it's my camouflage now. And I mean, it does help. Putting a camouflage on these things always kind of, it masks the imperfections a little bit, but also just adds a little bit of detail in its own right. And yeah, they're always better once you put a little camouflage on. But yeah, it's pretty much done now. So I put on a couple last tweaks, and then we're ready to take this thing out for its, well, first flight that you'll see. Not its first flight, but its first flight that you'll see. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so here we have our bomber, and we have plenty of power going on in this thing. We have 2 of these very large jet engines for the era. If we're considering this thing is like 60s, that's quite a lot of power to give this thing. So much that this airframe would have to be rather reinforced probably to not fall apart from the speed, but yeah, we'll see that in a second. We also have in here, if I can move my camera properly, 4 big old bombs. Let's just pretend that these are like 1,000-pound bombs, maybe? I don't know. 4,000 pounds of bombs seems reasonable, maybe? Well, let's take it for a spin. Okay, so here we are on the runway, and as you can see, all the control surfaces are working as intended, and these engines are super cool, to be honest. I do quite enjoy them. Realistically, we probably have piston engines and jet engines, and just smaller of both, but you know, it's kind of fun to use a turboprop to its largest capability, and as you can see, it gives us quite a lot of performance. This thing is already up to 500 kilometers an hour and would already be rivaling the pace of most World War II fighters, and by now, vastly exceeding it. And we're not even 2/3 of the way. Oh, well, I mean, by the time I finished that sentence, we were. We should get to about 900 kilometers an hour-ish, which I say that like it's not very impressive. Don't get me wrong. That's very quick. How you feeling in there, bud? Feeling important? Trust me, you're really not. These turrets don't work, buddy. I'm sorry to tell you. Okay, we've given her a fair minute to build up some speed, and here we are, about 900 kilometers an hour. We could probably, if we decrease our prop pitch, decrease our prop RPM, get a little bit more out of it. Maybe up to 920, but the true test will be how fast can we go once we drop these bombs, and there's no point dropping them if we don't have something to drop them on, so we'll head back to the airfield and let's see if we can actually hit something this time. Now obviously if I was a better man, then I might have actually put a proper bomb sight in here and set up a camera so that you can actually have an idea of where your bombs are going. I don't know if that's possible. It might be, but I don't know how to do it if it is possible. So we don't have any bomb sights. This is just going to be complete speculation as to where the bombs land. So I reckon low altitude is probably going to be the way to go here. Okay, here we go. We're going to go for a strafe on... Well, not a strafe. We're going to go for like Rolling Thunder kind of thing on this here building at the back. And I reckon we're going to have to drop about now, to be honest, if we want to hit this thing. And there we go. All 4 bombs out. And I've missed by a country mile there. Yeah, no, that wasn't great. Oh, no. Okay, well, yeah, that's awkward. Maybe bomb sights are valuable. And to be honest, with the reduced weight, we're pretty easily touching 910, which isn't that much of an improvement over before. So I'm not going to do a full top speed run, because I feel like we could be doing that for a very, very long time. But one thing I do want to show is just how fast you could climb with this thing. I mean, there is basically no limit. If we just pop it to like 32 degrees here, we're just going to keep going up for a fair duration. I reckon we can easily hit 5,000 meters. Yeah, so we're up here, 5,000 meters, and we still have 600 kilometers an hour of speed in one fairly steady climb at quite a steep angle. Yep, climb rate's quite good. But ultimately, I do think that level bombing is not going to be where this thing would really be able to apply itself. So the advantage, or like the main advantage here of the turboprops would be takeoff distance compared to jets of the era. This is a heavy aircraft. It would take quite a while to get this thing off the ground with just jet thrust. So having the propellers means we have a much shorter takeoff, and so that's why I've painted it in this navy camouflage. I thought maybe it could take off from carriers at a stretch. They did it with the B-25, technically. Now you've got a more powerful kind of B-25 thing that you can take off from carriers, and it could be a fairly sturdy platform against submarines, probably. Anti-submarine warfare kind of dealio. Pop a big radar on the bottom in a big bulbous thing, and then have depth charges? Maybe? I think that makes sense. But regardless of whether it makes sense or not, let's see if we can bring this thing in for a landing here. And there are some weird things going on with the landing gear that weren't there. As I move, you can see the landing gear ever so slightly. That's how it is in the editor. And then when I level out, it sticks through the wing. And on this side as well. That's weird. It's a little bit annoying. That's a shame. Oh well. Okay, we got a line on the runway here. Got about 350 kilometers an hour of speed. The engines are off to allow me to slow down a little bit easier, so hopefully I'd have to do a go-around, otherwise it would be a rather panicked switching on of the engines. But it's all looking good for now. We got a bit of a crosswind, but that's okay. We can deal with that, and touchdown. A little bit rough, but there you go. I'll do the job. And there are brakes. They're just not the most effective in the world. So it will eventually come to a stop. Just might take a little minute. There we go. A perfect little mission where we missed all of our ordnance. So maybe, no, actually perfect is a bad term for it. But an acceptable mission because we didn't get shot down by the literally zero enemies. But yeah, I think this thing does the job quite well. I mean, obviously, in real life, probably outshone by smaller, lighter bombers in its intended role, and then also in its slightly other intended role, which would be maritime patrol. It's probably outshone by larger aircraft with longer ranges, and the landing gear is still doing the thing. Oh, that's really annoying. But regardless, I still think it's a fun little experiment to see, you know, what would happen if the B-25 kind of just didn't end its development cycle. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you did, please leave a like, comment, and or subscribe to the channel. And hopefully we'll be doing quite a lot more fun videos like this one. But anyway, I won't keep you for too long, and I will see you in the future. Goodbye! And as always, a huge thank you to this channel's patrons: Burner Potato, Camjam135, Cody N, DJ Pete, Gavoon, Gunmaster99, Sad Cat, Just Casualty Season 1, Last 11, Mark, Mildly Invested, Nicholas K, Rolls Brocken, Ryan Brody, The Canadian Emperor, Zerestein, and Zeit Wolverine. Woo! Thank you very much for your support.